week. We have a nice new look on the website. The navigation bar scrolls with you as you run the page down. Very, very cool.
Very, very cool. A lot of blog pieces coming up. We are going to continue to be the sty in the eye, if you will, of the 1%, the political elite here in Rhode Island. But we've got a very special guest with us today. We've got none less than Phil Isle, a household name in Rhode Island journalism, former news editor of the Providence Phoenix. He's a regular contributor from everyone to WGBH, to Salon.com, and, of course, GQ.com. Phil, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
A lot of ground to cover. We want to talk about journalism, the players, your thoughts on new media versus all. There's just a lot of ground to cover. But the one thing I've got to ask you about, my relationship with my personal relationship, if you will, with the Providence Phoenix. When I moved to this state in the late 80s, I moved up here from the New York metropolitan area. And if there was a single newspaper that, quote unquote, changed my life, it was the Village Voice. The Village Voice, for those of us who haven't read it in the last 5 years, when it's turned into nothing more than sort of a glorified entertainment version of a coupon shopper, was in the 80s, 90s, and even past 9/11, really a conscience of New York City. Christgau, Nat Hentoff, rock and roll, nightlife, society. Everything you wanted in a newspaper was there. It was bleeding edge. And it was the pulse of New York City, because you could read about everything, what everyone was doing, to who they were doing, to where they were doing it, and where you should be doing it. It's just an astonishing newspaper, because it brought together, say, for example, a civil libertarian like Nat Hentoff, who I think the greatest honor was written about him a few years back, when it was noted that he essentially pissed off everybody from the Catholic Church to the Green Party and everybody in between. And if you're a journalist or a wannabe like myself, there is no higher honor. So you had this great alternative newspaper that was founded really in the ethos of the beat movement, and was able to, over a period of 50 to 60 years, to really be a collective effort of everything that mattered in New York, politically, socially, ethically, financially, culturally. I moved to Rhode Island. I'm like, okay, what's this going to be like? And at the time, the Providence Journal actually mattered. And yet there was this great paper that went through several iterations to what we became known as the Providence Phoenix. It was the new paper, I guess, when I first... And again, I opened it, and the first time I was startled, because on one hand, I felt like I was reading The Voice, but that wasn't because it was a derivative effort. It wasn't because it was just some clone wannabe. It had its own unique voice, its own unique feel on the city of Providence. It defined culture for us, and actually was able to define political individuals, sometimes in ways that, they probably didn't first. So much of our dialogue these days is infused with some of our recollections of the Phoenix / newspaper. Everything from Halitosis Hall to
Vodisland, God bless Philippe and Jorge.
Philippe type Vodisland to the Bud Eye it's just, and at the same time, while it could be funny and irreverent, it could also be poignant.
And it served as proto-porn for a generation of young gentlemen like myself. That adult section in the days before the internet, and before you turned 18 and you could actually go to the store and buy a Penthouse or a Playboy, was amazing as a 14, 15-year-old juvenile man.
An eye-opener it was. So Phil, what happened?
Well, I think it was telling. By the way, I love that introduction. You got me nostalgic, because I agree with so much of what you said. It was telling that two other alt weeklies closed that very same week, one in Tennessee and most notably the San Francisco Bay Guardian in San Francisco. And I think, to me, it was a sign that the economic model that drives such newspapers just doesn't work anymore, or in the places that are still hanging on, doesn't work in the same way that it once did. I said in my farewell piece that I was told during my job interview for the job of news editor at the Providence Phoenix that I was the last person to interview for a position in the offices of the Boston Phoenix. This was about a week after the Boston Phoenix had closed, after some, I think, 48 years, and they invited me up to that shell of an office just because it practically made sense. Their outgoing editor was the guy who interviewed me. Why doesn't it work anymore? Because the things you see on, namely places like Craigslist, the ads you see on social media, aren't going into the pages of the local free paper anymore. From everything from a personal ad to a job ad to some of the proto porn.
Classifieds.
Yeah.
Classifieds are a major, or were a major driver of revenue for print media, for sure.
Yeah. Just to put that into perspective, I mentioned this in my final piece. In the 18 months I was news editor, the average issue was anywhere between 21 pages to sometimes upwards into the low 40s for a special issue. Back in the 90s, maybe even the early 2000s, the average was in the 70s or the 90s pages. And in one case in the early 90s, I found a summer issue that was 216 pages. It literally weighed a pound. I put it on a mail scale. So that just tells the whole story right there. I mean, the money... God bless our ad sales folks who work so hard until the very end, but is literally a tougher sell, if not an impossible sell, to get on the phone with someone and say, do you want to pay X number of dollars to put an ad into the weekly paper this week?
Well, we know that personally because some of the same efforts we engage in here in trying to support independent radio. I mean, was there ever thought of moving it completely over to the web and just publishing from the web only?
A lot of people have asked that, and on one level it makes sense. And again, I wasn't the numbers guy, so a better person to ask would be our publisher. But the economics of publishing on the web and the economics of publishing print are entirely different. They're black and white. People may not see that when you see the same article in the paper that's on the web, but to sell an ad on the web you're making next to no money versus what you could make in print. And the Phoenix, via our distribution, our ad revenues, it just was a print publication. That was in its DNA. I think it's a lot more difficult, if not impossible, for the weekly papers to transition to the web as opposed to a daily paper. I mean, when you're putting out a weekly paper, you're only really generating content, if you're a small shop like the Phoenix, once a week. You can't get the same amount of traffic to your website that in turn makes an appealing sale to someone who's going to buy an ad. It just doesn't work. Some of the, New York Magazine, for example, which itself has changed. I mean, they went from weekly to bi-weekly. They have a staff and a booming web operation that they do very well. They can create new content by the minute. And some alt weeklies can do that as well, but the economics just aren't the same.
What happens now to all that pent up energy? Now we ourselves here are a creation of the independent media. Mm-hmm. This was an idea that was hatched by our guru, our founder, the big man of independent media in Rhode Island, one Tony Jones.
All hail Tony Jones,
and who is a force, a life force, actually, not just a mere mortal. So what happens to all that pent-up energy? I mean, do you see any potential replacement? I wouldn't say replacement, a shadow on the horizon.
Well, I mean, obviously Motif is a publication that's still kind of occupying that same alternative media space, and I think literally the same week the Phoenix closed, they announced they were going from monthly to bi-weekly. So they are filling in some of the slack. Philippe and Jorge are now writing their column there. I was just reading their column this week, and I was chuckling in the coffee shop. So they are, literally carrying on that flame. We can have another conversation about whether it's, stacks up to what the Phoenix was. But you see other outlets, I think, inching in. I mean, it's a conversation about the bigger ways that the media landscape is changing. The Providence Journal, unfortunately, continues to shrink and atrophy. Places like Go Local are perhaps getting more traction. But to answer your question, I don't think anything for the time being, and maybe ever, is going to fill that unique place that the Phoenix filled every week on the shelves of pizza stores and coffee shops and liquor stores. This interesting voice-driven take on everything from which bands were coming to town to the latest political shenanigans to one of my favorite pieces I got to do before the paper closed was last year was the 60th anniversary of the Newport Jazz Festival, and I could just, for that week, write a feature piece digging into the history, which is amazing, from riots to Frank Sinatra
to Bob Dylan going electric.
Well,
I mean,
that's the
like that
folk
to me is
festival,
the
yeah.
you talk Newport, music
Totally.
festival, like that's the thing. Like, wow,
Totally.
this is when Bob Dylan went. Like that's a piece of history we have here in the state.
So, but we don't have that weekly outlet anymore. So I think there is a hole now.
Right, because really, when you look across the landscape, and Go Loco, as we call it here, may be the closest thing in terms of spirit. We've had Kate Nagel on the show, and she's wonderful. And
Russ Moore.
And Russ Moore, who's a regular contributor here, who's a good friend of the show. They seem to have that same, at least a touch of that same gonzo approach.
In some ways, I wouldn't call them an alternative. Well, I don't even think the term
Go
alternative.
Local is clickbait.
I don't think the term alternative is even relevant
It's
anymore.
clickbait. It's putting a tweet or a Facebook post with some outrageous headline in it just to get you to click on some rehashed press release from some god-awful state office.
That is the opinion of part of the station management here at coalitionradio.us. I'm looking for vines.
Forgive me here. This like the slideshows, the way the page refreshes. It's like just
that
visually.
sound you hear is the future of any relationship with Go Loco.
terrible visual representation of any type of website. I mean, it's for the user standpoint, it's awful.
Let's just zoom out for a second. I'm not breaking any news here. The media landscape in Rhode Island, especially the print and web media landscape, is in flux, and I think is in a state of crisis. Pick the Providence Journal, for decades the most important news organization in the state, and probably still the most important. But man, those new owners are. We thought Balo was bad. I mean, the new owners are clearly worse. They're laying off people. They're making the design of both the website and the paper worse. It's almost like they're trying to send that paper down to its grave faster than it was already going. So it's a scary time when you look, because the political corruption and silliness is continuing apace, if not going faster in the state right now, and we need media outlets to be getting stronger, not weaker.
Well said. It's at least once a show we get certain bonus points internally if we can drop certain bombs, and one of the bombs is the execrable bomb. And
I can never say that.
Execrable. And unfortunately,
Great word.
the urinal, and in homage to Philippe and Jorge, the urinal, as it will, is becoming truly execrable. So on that note, you're listening to the Coalition on Talk Radio. AM 790, your source for news and business. We're going to be back in just a few minutes. Right now, we're with Phil Isle talking about the media. We'll be right back.
Trying to quit smoking? No luck? Cigarette smoking and tobacco use are the most preventable cause of illness and death in the country. Kodak has been providing effective, respectful, and compassionate treatment, recovery support, and prevention services since 1971. Kodak's trained and certified tobacco treatment specialists use the latest practices and information in a clinical setting that supports your efforts to be tobacco-free. Covered by health insurance, call Kodak today, 275-5037. That's 275-5037. Tune in every Tuesday to the Cigar Club with host Joe Hozempa. Joe will talk about premium cigars, cigar accessories, and discuss the culture and lifestyle of the cigar lover. Plus, Joe will talk to owners, vendors, and creators that master the perfect blend of cigars. Passion can be the centerpiece of life's memorable moments. Those moments should be shared with family and friends. The Cigar Club, sponsored by Quarry Brothers, suppliers of natural stone and hardscape products, and Churchill's Smoke Shop and Lounge.
Hi, this is Fred.
And this is Eric with Beacon Shipping Logistics.
If you're a snowbird and getting ready to head south for the winter, let us take the stress out of your trip with Beacon Shipping Logistics. Spend more time with your friends and family and less time driving. Let us ship your car with no hassles. Just call us at 855-3SHIP-IT.
We can ship your car, motorcycle, truck, or RV anywhere in the world. Fully insured with great rates and door-to-door service. Thousands of dealerships all over the country trust Beacon exclusively to transport their inventory. We offer the absolute best, most reliable service in the industry with open or enclosed transport for your precious cargo.
Did you see a car online in another state and just can't get it there? Whether it's in Portland, Maine or Portland, Oregon, let us at Beacon Shipping Logistics deliver it right to your front door. That's stress-free living.
Call Beacon Shipping Logistics, your one source for transporting one car or an entire fleet. It's 855-3SHIP-IT.
855-374-4748.
Or online at beaconshippinglogistics.com. for service that shines.
Now is a great time to settle in and start your remodeling projects with an investment that lasts a lifetime, like a new kitchen or bath from Quality Tile in West Warwick. I'm Tara Granahan. You got to check them out. Quality Tile, a family business, and the owners, Bill and Denise, have that motto that I just love. We're not trying to be the biggest. We are just trying to do the best job for you. They've been proving that to homeowners and contractors for 25 years. Granite countertops by Quality Tile in West Warwick, much more than just granite, marble, and tile. Their show